Welcome to the Watchmen. We're here to talk about Dune Part 2. We, of course, being me, Deepak and film critic, and Bruno Menezes, who both of us were able to see individually, of course. Dune Part 2 at an early IMAX screening. And we already recorded a non-spoiler version of our review where we talk about directing, acting, writing, things that we liked, things that we were a little more critical of, and our overall impressions of the movie, which, spoiler alert, are very, very positive. But here we're going to actually take some time to talk about the spoiler stuff. So for people who have read the book and want a little more specificity as to what may or may not happen that's from the book and how they may have changed things, or people who just really don't give a shit about spoilers and just want to know what the hell happens in the movie before they go see it, you absolute monsters, this podcast is for you. So let's just jump into the spoilery stuff, and I'll start by saying, not that this is a particular like a hot point or anything like that, but as I was walking out of the theater at the end of the movie, there was a guy in the front who was very, very angry that Paul kills the Baron, because apparently in the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's Aaliyah who kills the Baron. Mm-hmm. And he was ranting about this. He was not happy at all. He was like, she's not even born yet. How could they do this?
So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because like that was something that I didn't really realize that they were doing this difference from the book until halfway through part 2, because the book takes place over 5 years, and then Dune part 1 and 2 takes place within 9 months, because I think for the entirety of that Jessica's pregnant.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, because you know the book's better than me. I never got a good sense of the timeline. And I also never got a good sense of, like, just because she's pregnant, does that mean that pregnancies last 9 months in sci-fi world? Because it felt like he was going through the Fremen trials for, like, at least a year.
I kind of got that feeling too, but, like, I mean, I don't know any information from the book that explains anything about pregnancies being longer, or if, like, the Bene Gesserit has, like, some sort of control on how long it is. That might be something that I'm gonna have to, like, look into it later today. But just to, like, touch on that note from that, like, one rather annoyed patron that you ran into, I mean, I don't see an issue with it. Yes, so, like, since we're getting into spoilers, I now will also be, like, spoiling the book a little bit here. In the book, in the actual, like, first book, the Baron dies by the hands of Alia, Paul's sister, and this happens when she's, like, age 4, and she's the one that does, like, I'm pretty sure that she is the one that does, like, the whole reveal that her and Paul are, like, the Baron's, like, grandchildren. I think the reasons that they made that change from between, like, movie and the book is, like, one, they're, like, establishing a different time period. At, like, at least right now in my headcanon, it's taking place over a period of 9 months. And then B, they just didn't want a toddler killing someone on screen, I think.
Yeah, I think that the change absolutely makes sense. I was actually expecting, and this again, whatever, we're in spoilers, people know that Anya Taylor-Joy is in the movie. They know that she's playing Aaliyah. She does not appear for more than one brief dream sequence,
right?
Which very much confused my wife. But on top of that, I spent the whole movie thinking that towards the end, Rebecca Ferguson or Jessica would go into a room, we would hear the cries of labor or something, and out would come a fully formed Anya Taylor-Joy as her daughter. Like, I thought they were going to be like, oh, she's a Bene Gesserit, witch magic accelerated
like
her gestation. Sort of, yeah. Like, she would just appear as an adult already, or like a young adult. And I think I'm glad that didn't happen.
I'm very glad that didn't happen.
We were heading in a certain direction, I thought. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting little change from the book.
I definitely, like, I went into it much like you, already knowing that Anya Taylor-Joy was gonna be a surprise entrance in this, and, like, having a good idea of who she was gonna be playing. I was expecting that we were actually gonna be ending this on, like, a time skip, and, like, it was actually gonna be, like, a lot more of a obvious lead-in into Dune Messiah than this was. But yeah, no, I was still like pleasantly surprised by how they did use her in the movie. Yeah, I think that's also like kind of why Dennis was okay just like bringing her onto the red carpet, because they're like, oh, she's not in there for long, and they have no idea.
Yeah, I think I remember we were talking about it on the other show. We were criticizing like why even bring her if you want to keep it a secret. But I think what they did was actually muddy the waters even further by having her there, being like, wait, what are they going to do to bring her into the story now?
Hmm.
Um, and in rewatching part one, because I did the same thing as you, I rewatched it this past weekend. Paul knows that Jessica is pregnant in the first movie,
Yeah.
so that is established. So I guess, yeah, I like you. Yeah, they could have time jumped. They could have done Birth of Venus. Whatever. They could have done a lot of things. Uh, let's talk about the Chani of it all, and specifically how the movie ends with her relationship to Paul. We talked about how structurally um, the first half or the first hour or so of the movie is really not just Paul becoming a Fremen, but it's the Paul Chani love story and the bond that they have. But then
Hmm.
by the end of the movie, when he kind of accepts the mantle of being the Lisan al Gaib, which she's not a fan of. She doesn't believe in all the prophecy stuff. So she's already kind of ticked off when he drinks the water of life, and he starts to accept his role as the leader of the Fremen. But then at the end, when he decides to take the princess's hand in marriage, she's furious. And I don't know if it's like that in the book, where she's more of a willing, understanding kind of, oh, I understand that you have to do this for political reasons, but I'll still be your mistress or your concubine or like your Lady Jessica kind of thing. But she's very, very upset in the movie.
So she is. I mean, don't get me wrong. She's definitely upset in the book as well, but she's definitely a little bit more accepting of it. But then, again, that just goes back into like the time period of the book, because in the book they have 5 years, like Paul and Chani, before any of this happens, and like in those 5 years they already have like 2 kids. So yeah, I think it was like that was a good I think that was a good change of pace from Dennis Villeneuve to specifically just like have a lot more. I think we're gonna have a lot more of a stronger focus on Chani going forward, and this is where we might even start like diverging a little bit more from the books. But like that's only like we can only wait until Dune decides to see about that for sure.
Anything specifically that you wanted to bring up? Because you know the book better than me.
I was I think overall they did a really good job in pulling like most of the things from the book. I already mentioned earlier that I expected Fade Ratha, Austin Butler's character, to have a little bit more exposure throughout the entirety of the movie, but
Hmm.
more like sort of connected to that also. I apologize if I butchered this character's name. Tufir Hawat,
Yeah.
who was played in the first movie by Stephen McKinley Henderson, was very absent in this movie, and that was very surprising to me because he has like a very big, not a very big, he has a very big background role in the book, and that in the first movie he disappears shortly after the Harkonnens attack the House Atreides on Arrakis. In the book, it's it's revealed shortly after that attack that he was captured by the Harkonnens, and after the attempt on the Baron's life by the Duke and all that, that like killed him and killed not didn't kill the Baron but killed his mentat. He forced Hawat to replace him um, as his advisor, and like for the entirety of Dune Part One, he's helping the Baron like hunt down this Muad'Dib, not knowing that it's Paul. And in the meantime, he's also like very sneakily like sabotaging the Harkonnens here and right to help Paul. So I thought that was a very interesting. That's a very interesting storyline from the book that was very noticeably absent from both this movie and the previous movie. And I don't know.
Do
But
you do you think they cut it out because it would have been too confusing or too much muchness going on, or was there just because he shot scenes reportedly that actor shot scenes of Tufir Hawat for the second one. They just didn't make the cut.
They, I mean, just like based off of how the movie came out, and like, don't get me wrong, the movie came out great. I think that if they had left those scenes in, it would have just made the movie too much longer. Um, because like the way that it leads up to, and now we're getting to like heavy spoilers of the book, leading into that final meeting with the emperors, and when Muad'Dib attacks with the Freeman, and that leads to like the whole knife fight, which we'll get into later. Um, Hawat is given a specific order by the Baron going into that meeting, to use a poison needle on Muad'Dib. And when he realizes that Muad'Dib is Paul, he uses the needle on himself.
Oh.
Which
So he won't kill Paul. He'd rather kill himself.
exactly, because and it also ties into, he was like very willingly helping the Harkonnens up until that point in hunting down Muad'Dib, and then he realized that he was just trying to hunt down Paul. So it was a lot of that, and then it was just like, it's also a really good establishment of like the characters' true nature and like their loyalty, as well as like how he can fight, how the character of Hawat was able to fight back towards their mentat programming, because that also is part of it, where they'll literally like program themselves to like follow a specific leader.
Okay. You mentioned the knife fight. Let's take a step back and talk about Fade, and specifically Lady Margot Fenrig, who, to my understanding, does not have a large role in the book. We talked in the non-spoiler review about how we're not sure, you're not sure if Fade really got enough screen time in this.
Mm-hmm.
And she almost seems to function as in one scene, let me see if I can get as much of the Fade characterization out of the way. So by giving him the hand in the box test and kind of seducing him, the next scene is her reporting to the Reverend Mother, being like, oh, this is, he likes humiliation, and something else she says, and that's how we can control him. That, of course, leads into a larger discussion about the Bene Gesserit secretly pulling the string the whole time. What did you think of the way that the movie utilized that character and sort of the relationship between her and Fade, and that one scene that they had?
It was almost like they used her to like basically establish like a parallel between her and the Reverend Mother, because like that whole scene was just a parallel with the scene from the first Dune. Like it even included like the exact same commands of like, come, kneel. And I think I may be remembering wrong, but like she also like left that meeting like pregnant, right?
Yeah, so I think the idea is that she let him impregnate her, because that's the whole Bene Gesserit thing, right? They want to have daughters of sacred bloodlines and all that.
Right. I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember that specifically from the book, but maybe I'm misremembering. But
I mean, that could be another interesting wrinkle down the road for the movie franchise. Like, if there's a son of Fade Rotha that shows up.
Yeah, that's true.
Or rather, it would be a daughter, I guess.
But like she is definitely used in the same manner of just like sort of like vetting him and seeing if he's worthy enough to take on this mantle.
Did you want to talk about the knife fight?
Oh yes, I've been waiting to talk about the knife fight.
All right, go for it. It's all you.
The first thing that I wanted to get into, just like, and I want to see if I'm like maybe looking too much into it or not, but right before the knife fight, Paul turned to Chani and said, "Remember, no matter what, I'll love you as long as I breathe," or something like that. Yeah, I think it was actually that.
I think that's exactly the exact line. Yeah.
Is it just me, or did he get stabbed specifically in the lung? And was that like some form of symbolism?
No, I thought he got stabbed kind of in the side of his abdomen.
Well, he got stabbed in the side of his abdomen, but then there was another, like, he also got stabbed a second time, like, sort of like on the
No, the
shoulder.
second time was kind of upper right shoulder is what I saw.
Okay. Then
So
they,
he lets himself be stabbed there so that he can take out the knife from the first stab in the abdomen,
right.
and that's the knife he uses to kill
Mhm.
Fade.
I was just, maybe I was just reading it too much of like looking where he was stabbed and to be like, oh, is he gonna get
Oh,
stabbed in
the
the lung?
symbolism of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. But no, I thought that knife fight was honestly like really really good because like when it comes to like reading, it's always hard to like imagine a knife fight when you're reading it in a book. Obviously, they're always doing a lot of like interspersed storytelling in between. I think the way they established it in the movie and just like how I mentioned before with just like the absolute silence while they were fighting, like no music whatsoever, just the knife swishing, um chip and chatter. I thought that was, yeah, no, just start to finish beautiful. Did you have any thoughts?
No, I think I agree with you. The one thing I thought about the knife fight, which I kind of thought about the whole final war scene in general, was that it all felt a little short, but I'm fine with that because the intensity was there. And I would rather it be short and intense and almost leave me wanting more rather than it being way too long. It drags on. I'm like, oh my God, when the hell are we going to get out of here?
I
And I didn't feel that way at all. But I thought the knife fight was really well done. Both the actors were obviously very committed. And it ended in a kind of unusual way. It wasn't just like, um, one of them makes like a shocking move and then all of a sudden we see like a wound we hadn't seen before and then they collapse.
I
It was done a little more interesting to me.
I was legitimately like, even having read the book at one point, I was like, is Paul gonna die? Wait a minute.
Yeah, that's a good movie when you know how it's going to end and you're still like, but is it?
I was like, like in my head, I'm like, they could definitely just like give it to his son in the next movie, I guess. But is he gonna? Is he?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that would actually be interesting. Like, do we? I thought he was at one point. He notices that Paul is looking at Chani
Mm-hmm.
and goes, "Oh, is this your girl?" And I thought he was going to do something at that point to maybe like threaten her or go over and kill her. But I think the implication was, once I'm through with you, she's next. And of course, it never
Right.
gets to that.
I got the same inkling as well. Like I was just trying to predict it. Like he's just gonna turn around, and just throw the knife at her. I can see it now.
Yeah.
um, but no, and then but like to your point of like it being too short and like the lead up to it, I do kind of agree with that because like it wasn't so much that we were going through the battles between the Freemen and the Harkonnens and the Sardaukar that I was like, when is this movie gonna end? It was just me being like, when are we going to get to the knife fight? And then he got into, and then he got into the council room and he started talking to the Emperor. I'm like, can we get to the knife fight? And then they gathered them up as prisoners. They were moving them away. I'm like, are we going to have the knife fight?
I remember when they first cast Austin Butler because there was a lot of talk that it was going to be Pattinson or it was going to be someone else, but it was Butler, and they had said that he has already started taking knife fighting training or something. It's some special like Philippine
Mm.
style of knife fight that they based it on. So I remember as far back as like 2 years ago when they announced that, like, okay, so it's going to lead up to the knife fight.
See,
They're going to climax with that.
I had actually missed that, so I was like partially worried. I was like, I swear to God, they're gonna leave the knife fight to the next movie.
Oh my God, that's like leaving the death of Smog to the third movie. Can't do
Jesus.
that. Oh man. Okay, I'm trying to think because I think we covered all my spoilery stuff. You tell me because is the gladiator stuff from the book or is that something they invented?
Um, I think they talked about it. It's not so much like it's not so much that it's like that there's an actual like full out scene about the gladiator fights. I think it's just more like when they're like explaining who Fate Rada is and what he's done. Yeah. Um but there is like in the book, there's a lot of animosity throughout most of the book between him and his baron, like just trying to one up each other, and like even Hawat being the baron's advisor in the background kind of tries to like stir the pot every now and then. Um, so yeah, they I think they did a really good job at establishing Fade Ratha as a much more psychotic and ruthless warrior in this movie compared to the book.
Oh, he's more ruthless in the movie. You think?
No, I would say so. Like because there's I would even say like maybe he's a little bit more manipulative in the book, specifically when it comes to like the dialogues between him and his uncle throughout most of it. So yeah, I think between it's like a lot it's like the same level of evil, but they take it in different directions between the movie and the book, I think.
Okay.
But I enjoyed it a lot, and like just to, like touch on that, not to go back to the technical stuff. The entirety of Harkonnen being in black and white, that was
I
amazing.
kept thinking of Thor: Love and Thunder the whole time.
Oh come on, please.
I couldn't. That's just. I was like, oh, it's cool what they're doing. I love the aesthetic, and it just reminds me of when he's fighting Christian Bale on that black and white planet.
But like
And
the
that's all.
fireworks, did you see how they were doing the fireworks?
Oh, it looks like the. What is the significance of the black oil thing throughout the Harkonnen? Like the aesthetic of it, like even the tub that he goes into for
I mean, there's no tub in the book.
rehabilitation. So that's just something they invented for the movie.
There's no tub in the book. The symbol is well, there. I guess there's some of the. Let me take that from the top. The oil symbolism in the movie that they as like also does come a little bit in the book in the terms of the spice, because the spice in the books is meant to be um I don't know if,
Oil in real life, like the.
yeah, it's I don't
Yeah,
know if metaphors. I was trying to look for the word, but yeah,
No,
it's
it's a metaphor. Yeah.
yeah, it's a metaphor for oil in real life, and I think they just wanted to try to like keep that somehow, even though in the movie, spice sort of establishes a different metaphor, and but to keep that metaphor, they just like kept that with the Harkonnens, because in the book he doesn't need any healing. He just like zips away from the poison mist on his little like hover thing.
Okay, interesting. I thought it was. I don't know. I was giving it too much of a real world reading that it was like because he's Vladimir Harkonnen, so I thought it was like a Russian thing, and they're into oil.
Mm.
It was like a whole Russia is evil, but
I don't know if it was that. I know that like Harkonnen like specifically comes from the word Harka, which translates to bull, and that's like supposed to be symbolic with the House Atreides' history of bullfighting, and then
right.
and then in this movie we get that one line where Paul goes, "We are Harkonnens," which I just mentally go, "You are the bull."
All right. Anything last minute before we wrap up here?
Um, Honestly, like 10 out of 10 movie. I may need another week or so to sleep on it, but at least like so far, my consensus is that if this came out on its actual like original release date, respectfully, fuck Oppenheimer. Over to you.
Wow. I want to see how it holds up on a repeat viewing once, and I may even go see it again in the theater, because that's the fun part of early screenings is we still have a lot of time left to go actually see it with another crowd. But yeah, I don't know if it's a 10 out of 10. I would say probably like an 8, where the first one was more of like a 6 or a 7. This is an 8, maybe even a 9. It's really, really fantastic. It's really nice to see large scale sci-fi done this way. It feels like we haven't really gotten a movie like this, frankly, since I can't even remember. I mean, obviously the first Dune, but I mean, this wipes the floor with anything we've seen from like Star Wars or any of those franchises in recent years. And,
I mean, no, absolutely.
I would urge, and this is again something that Riley's going to clip and save in the Hall of Fame here, but I would urge people to see it in theaters while they can. And if you're going to go to theaters, like I always say, there's no point going to a theater unless you're seeing it in a premium format. So I don't know if it's available in 3D, but if you can see it in IMAX, Dolby, XD, 4DX, whatever they have out there for you, go ahead and do it that way. I don't know that a regular theater screen is going to do it justice because the lighting and the technical work is so precise. You really need to see it in a screen that's been calibrated and isn't run by some dude in high school who's smoking pot up in the projection room and doesn't give a shit about it. So, yeah, go see Dune Part 2. I think we're both very, very positive on it.
Absolutely.
All right, that was the Watchmen review, bite-sized spoiler review of Dune Part 2. Of course, you can go check out our non-spoiler review as well, where we get into more of the filmmaking aspects of it rather than just the adaptation itself. But don't forget to check out NIHF.com for more nerdy news. We'll probably have a written review up, and of course, we'll have all our podcasts. We have a Nerd Out coming up with Riley, our site's founder, and the man upon whose path we walk. He's going to be talking about Dune on his Nerd Out, just sort of the whole universe of Dune. I believe it's not just specific to the movies or anything. And then of course we have the Watchmen, we have the Game Boys, we have the Nerd Outs, we have Nerd Here Weekly. There's the Avatar rewatch. There's all sorts of stuff that Riley and I keep cooking up, and we never actually act on, but maybe one day we will. But until then, this has been The Watchmen, about Dune. And until next time, just remember that we hate sand because it's coarse and it's rough and it gets everywhere.